Hey guys, I'm RPGcaster and welcome to the first edition of Deckology 101, the segment where we look over different types of decks and I show you how to build them. Rather than the deck checks, which are just looks at specific people's builds, this will teach you the different options of the different deck build, and then I'll use my deck as a template to show you how you can build it the way that would suit your playstyle. To those of you who are worried that you won't get to see my deck build because you just copy decks, I'll be showing my build at the end of the video, so don't worry about that. But for those of you who want to learn what goes into building a deck, stay for the entire show, I guess. Spike Brothers are probably one of the stranger clans that exist out there. When I have to explain to a new player what the different clans are, you have a choice between your sparkling gay knights, your dragons with machine guns, and monster football players. And then they choose the sparkling knights because that's what everybody loves. Go Gold Paladins. I'll be honest, this clan isn't exactly the most popular clan out there. After all, when you have a choice between this and, you know, other stuff, most people are gonna choose Blaster Blade. Not to mention that the only characters representing the clan in the anime are some stuck-up white-haired kid that gets made the butt of every joke, and an American football stereotype. This reminded me of something. Football! So Spikes have always been the inconsistent rush deck, which is why I always had a love-hate relationship with the deck. But then BT10 brought out the support I couldn't resist. The Sentinel reprint! Yeah! Okay, there was other stuff too. One of the more impressive cards was Bad End Dragger, Spike Brothers' ride break, and in my opinion, one of the most potent ride breaks in the game so far. So let's start there. I mean, with grade 1s, Bad End Dragger is probably one of the scariest things out there right now. But as with every ride break, it's important to know what cards to combine with it. I mean, riding a Bad End Dragger on top of a Bad End Dragger is a pretty bad idea. I just said bad a lot. How about that? Since the cards that attack with Bad End Dragger's effect disappear, you need to make use of the fact that A, they're leaving an empty space, and B, you're going to be losing cards, so you probably want to end at that turn. The skill is very powerful, but not one that should be used recklessly, and one that should probably be combined with one of the following cards. The more popular option, of course, is Dudley Emperor, the card that I'm using. Now, Dudley Emperor gets that 3k boost, which makes it a really solid backup if you don't end up using the ride break, and his effect, well, as you can see on screen right now, is a really useful effect as it makes use of those empty spaces Bad End Dragger brings out, as well as fueling soul for the various soul-based effects that Spike Brothers have. Now, the other option you have is Grateful Catapult, which I am not using. I'll shoot the effect up on screen right now. Grateful Catapult, it does the same thing as Dudley Emperor. The only difference is instead of gaining a 3k boost, this is an 11k Lord, meaning you have that higher defensive option if you miss the ride break. The downside, however, is that its ability, while being the same, has the cost of a Persona Blast, which makes it a little harder to get off. Now, on its own, Grateful Catapult is probably a better card than Dudley Emperor, but when you look at it from the point of view of using the ride break, when you have Dudley Emperor, you only need one copy of hand to be able to use Bad End Dragger's ride break. Whereas if you want to make use of Grateful Catapult's ability with Bad End Dragger, then you're going to have to wait for a second copy. So I'm leaning more towards Dudley Emperor, but I don't doubt Grateful Catapult can also work. As well as that, Spike Brothers have a multitude of grade 3 rear guards that are really good. The most popular choice being, of course, the Juggernaut Maximum, which is the Soul Blast, gains 5k, returns the deck, because you might as well pay the Soul Blast to get the power boost, because Juggernaut's going to disappear anyway. In fact, all units that attack are going to disappear, leaving that empty space anyway. Now, given that, my personal favorite choice was Skydiver, the triple rare from Booster 2. Now, Skydiver's effect is when its attack hits, so hits and not hits the Vanguard, like it can hit the rear guard as well, send it into Soul and call another card from hand. Now, this does neck you further, but since we're going for a final game push, it can add some much needed pressure to the attack. It's a 21k attacker on its own when Bad End Dragger is in effect, which is highly threatening. And as well as that, it lets you get off another attack. Now, there are two ways you can go with Bad End Dragger's ability. You can either go the final game push route, which is I'm going to put all this power up, which means you would be leaning more towards Juggernaut, or you can go the pressure play, which is my personal favorite. I'm leaning more Skydiver, and there are a lot of different cards in the other grades that support both. So let's move on to grade 2, shall we? Spike Brother got Dudley Mason in set 10. I cannot stress, whether you're an English player looking at this video looking forward to when you get Booster 10, or you already have Booster 10 because you're watching this in the future, or whether you're a Japanese player that just got Booster 10, you need to use Dudley Mason. I cannot stress this enough. Dudley Mason is probably one of the best grade 2 units in the game, and you may think I'm overreacting, but think about it. When Dudley Mason hits the Vanguard, you can counterblast 1, send 1 card to Soul, essentially fueling Soul for the deck, to get any Spike Brother card to field. Any. This makes it the ultimate toolbox card. You can switch that useless draw trigger in hand for a Juggernaut Maximum on turn 2. Or if you're lacking of a supporter, you can call a Wonder Boy or a Reckless Express. The amount of options that Dudley Mason opens up are limitless. And before you go saying, RPGcaster, you're dropping a card from hand to pay for the cost. It's not a neg, because you're dropping a card from hand to get something else. You're essentially swapping a useless card in your hand for something that you need. Now, another popular grade 2 choice is High Speed Blackie, as well as the 10k Vanilla from the older sets. High Speed Blackie being a 9k power Juggernaut Maximum clone, so I don't really need to go about with that. But with Bad End Dragger, High Speed Blackie can be a good option for hitting those pesky rear guards. After using the Soul Blast, he hits a good 24k power, which is really useful. But I'm going to go over some of the newer options that the deck gives, as well as Dudley Mason. So you got Charging Bill Collector, which is your support break. It's an 11k unit when you have a Limit Break Vanguard, and considering you'll either be using Grateful Catapult or Bad End Dragger as your Vanguards, I think it's a good beat stick to add in. When you're going for the final game push, it could be an additional 11k becoming 21k beat stick if you don't have your Skydivers or Juggernaut Maximums in deck for whatever reason. As well as that, it's a good beat stick for mid-game. You can't really go wrong with this unit here. As well as that, you go Blow Kiss Olivia, Soul Blast 2 to retire something in the front row. Again, this goes back to what I said about Skydiver, a good pressure play, because if they decide for whatever reason that they need to block that attack instead of a different attack, say you're attacking with a Skydiver and they'd rather take the Olivia instead of the Skydiver to limit your options, you can take out an Interceptor, no big deal, and you get that attack through as well. So I think Blow Kiss Olivia can be a really good option for getting rid of those pesky Interceptors, especially if they're using the special Interceptors. Swinging at it with a Skydiver or attacking the Vanguard with Olivia can force them to use maybe their only attacking unit and push them into a corner. So I think that's really good personally. Now let's move on to grade 1s, and before I move on, I need to make mention of probably the one more popular starting Vanguards for Spike Brothers, which is Mecha Trainer. Now, Mecha Trainer allows you, with the counterblast of 1 and retiring itself, to search for any grade 1. Now, this just adds to the toolbox options of Spike Brothers. Spike Brothers was never thought of as a toolbox clan, but with this starter, adding that to Dudley Mason, adding that to Dudley Emperor, all these different effects that grab stuff you want from deck, grab anything you want from deck, there are a lot of really good options for toolboxing. So I guess when I show you these grade 1 options, I want you to keep in mind that this starter is probably going to be the one used for most of you, and because of that, you can afford to run one-offs, so 1 copy of this, 1 copy of that. But yeah, let's head right into it. Of course, my personal favorite pick of Booster 10 is the Sentinel. Now, obviously, Null Guards are going to be in every competitive deck. There's no doubt about that. But the Sentinel here is, it looks really good. But yeah, it looks really good. That's all I have to say. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, the amount of Null Guards you use is all up to you. Spike Brothers are a very aggressive option, so I would be able to justify you only running 2. At the same time, with all the dangerous stuff out there, you want to survive until you can do the ride break, which means you might want to run 3 or 4. It's really up to you. I personally run 4 because, well, Spike Brothers aren't in need of really big supporters because of the beefy attackers they have. So the 6k supporter, you can just drop it as a 6k supporter in those dire situations, and it doesn't really hurt you that much. As well as that, if you have a lot in hand, you can always ditch the card for Emperor's Effect or Dudley Mason's Effect. It's really there for you to have, I guess, a safer, like, more security in terms of defending your opponent's attacks. Obviously, we're not going to even make a mention of the 8K vanilla because everyone runs them and everybody knows why. But let's move on to our 7Ks, which is Dudley... No, not Dudley, I'm dumb. Sorry, Reckless Express. Now, Reckless Express is a 7K grade 1 clone of Blackie and Juggernaut Maximum. Now, this is good because, one, it's a 7K supporter, a very solid supporter that can just be there. But secondly, it's a really good attacker if you use his Soul Blast to return it to deck. During Bad End Dragger's effect, this card can really help when you're lacking attackers. So, if your opponent decides, I don't want to hit that Bad End Dragger too hard, so I'm going to snipe his rear guards by attacking them, then you can just move this up. It's no big deal. Drop a trigger behind it. It doesn't matter because this thing can hit 22k on its own. As well as that, with Bad End Dragger's effect in play, you can put it in front of an 8k vanilla and hit 20k or 30k with Bad End Dragger in effect. It's a really, really good card. I don't see why you wouldn't run it. Maybe you might be wanting to use other 7Ks, but in my opinion, this is such an understated card, and it does have its use in a Spike Brothers deck despite the existence of Blackie and Juggernaut Maximum. Dudley Phantom is another good option. Don't run too many of these. I only run one. Because it can be searched with Mecha Trainer, it can be searched with Dudley Emperor, it can be searched with Dudley Mason. So if you need it, it can be searched out. It is basically a 6K that becomes a 10K supporter when it supports a Spike Brother, but it disappears at the end of the battle. So obviously the negative is that it disappears. And, you know, having Bad End Dragger's effect is irrelevant because since it's not attacking, it wouldn't have disappeared unless it had that effect. But if you want to give that extra push, this thing is there for it. Put it behind a Skydiver and you'll have a 31k Skydiver for your opponent to deal with. There's just so much stuff you can do with Dudley Phantom, but I do need to stress you need to be careful when using this card. It is not a card that's good to use recklessly. Moving on to the trigger lineup. Spike Brothers only have an option of 2 different crits, a stand, a draw, and a heal. Obviously you're going to be using the heal, and I guess you'd want to probably use a lot of crits because of the amount of damage you're going to be putting out there. But then you have the option between draws and stands. I'm for draws personally because with Dudley Mason's effect, you now have a way to filter those draw triggers out of hand. So you can get the plus out of your draw trigger, +1, then you can shift that useless card for something that you want. So in my opinion, draws are the way to go, but stands do have their merit because, you know, if you're attacking with your Bad End or your Dudley Emperor and you've already used your supporters, hitting a stand trigger means you can stand your supporters again, and it makes your, you know, second wave of attacks beefier. I've already mentioned Mecha Trainer, so the other starting Vanguard you'll probably be looking at is Babyface Isaac. Now, Babyface Isaac is the support break starting Vanguard. When it supports the Vanguard that has a limit break, actually, if it supports any unit that has a limit break, right, and your attack hits the Vanguard, you can send this thing to Soul and draw 1. Now, in my opinion, I like Mecha Trainer a lot better. But I can see the merit of Isaac because you don't lose the soul from, you know, the Pioneer skill, and you get a draw. If you're not really needing the grade 1s, I guess you could run this. The best thing I think this would be good for would be Graceful Catapult, which gives you a higher chance of getting the catapult. But it's an option that's there, and, you know, Mecha Trainer or this, the Spike Brothers deck can still function. I've seen people use Babyface Isaac, and it works for them. So it's a personal preference kind of thing, and you just have to kind of feel it out. Anyway, with Deckology 101, I decided that after I give my opinions on the different options for each grade, I would provide you with some, you know, random thoughts to help you out if you want to try out some interesting combo. So here are some random thoughts. If Soul is your issue, then you can still use Mecha Trainer because counterblasting 1, getting your Mecha Trainer to search for a Medical Manager, your on-call Soul Charger, means you get that nice 7k supporter and you don't lose any Soul because the Medical Manager you just called gives you the extra Soul right back. Using Bad End Dragger's effect, you can bounce lanes with Dudley Mason. What this means is you can attack with 1 unit, it disappears, attack with Dudley Mason. If you hit, then you can use its ability before Dudley Mason disappears to call in something else, and then that attack can hit as well. Spike Bouncer is also a good option for those of you who haven't thought about it, as every time you have a successful attack, this unit powers up. So if your opponent's on like 2 to 3 damage, and you're able to land a couple hits, like a few good hits, then this little Spike Bouncer might not be little anymore. And that's it. Thank you for joining me on the first episode of Deckology 101. If there are any clans that you would like me to go through in this format, please tell me and I will see what I can do. Hopefully I can get the other VG casters to come with me. I'm not 100% sure, but unless the other VG casters come with me, I won't be able to do anything but clans I'm familiar with. As always, subscribe, rate, comment, not rate, it's like, isn't it? Yeah, it's like. Subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff. And I'll see you next time. So this is RPGcaster signing off, and as we go, take a look at my deck build.